Exploring the unknown, from conspiracies to mysteries, you are entering the conspiracy sector.
Well, welcome everyone to this very special program. I am your host, Aubrey Batchelor. Sailing this amazing ship of knowledge with me is Chris Jacobs, and you are entering the conspiracy sector. We're on the other side of Halloween once again. You know, our favorite time of the year has come and gone, and we're on our way to fall festivities and the holiday season. And here we are again a month later, and it's Thanksgiving is approaching us. But that doesn't mean that the weird and the strange tales have to come to an end. And we're going to do this season, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we always have like holiday specials. We feel like, you know, everybody's aware of the glitz and the glamour of, traditional holiday celebrations. Well, you might as well mix it up and talk about some strange topics to open somebody's mind up. And today's topic is just that. Chris mentioned this topic, and I had never heard about it. Ironically enough, out of all the strange crap I've listened to, I've never heard about this, and got to doing some research into it. We're going to be talking about a strange, mysterious hole called Mel's Hole. And we're going to see, excuse the pun, we're going to see if we can't get to the bottom of Mel's Hole. See what I did there?
Uh-huh.
Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride. This dry sense of humor type stuff. But anyhow,
A
it
whole.
is strange. And I believe it's in Washington, Chris, and I had never heard about this. And Washington, Oregon, that whole north west coast area is just very strange in general. It's very eerie. Even that part of Canada, go up across the border into Canada, you got Bigfoot sightings up there. You got all these cryptid sightings. You got hauntings. It's just a weird area in general. Very very nice. Depending on what you like, rainy. But the fresh air. But then there's also all these strange stories. Just think about like all the feet that were washing up on the Oregon coast here a while back. You remember that story where all these random feet were like washing up onto the
Oh,
shore?
yeah, body parts and
Then
all.
you have all these cryptid sightings.
Yep.
And now we have a supposed mysterious, bottomless hole out in the Washington landscape. Back in the 1990s, there was a man by the name of Mel Waters, and we're going to get into the story. He called the OG program Coast to Coast AM when Art Bell was hosting it. And I imagine a lot of people listening to this show probably know of or have listened to Art Bell, I imagine, or now currently listening to Coast AM with George Norrie. And I was just thinking, since this was such a this particular guy, Mel Waters, when he called in with his story in Coast to Coast AM back in the 90s, it sparked a fascinating, like, revolution when it comes to Mel's Hole. Because when you'll see beginning to end, and I don't know, a lot of you may not be aware of this topic, and I don't want to get too involved with it when I'm giving you some tidbits here when we get into the story, but it's kind of crazy. It starts off a little bit more innocent. It goes into just a wild gambit of you don't know what to believe. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff on this, planet, on planet Earth. I can't believe what's beyond planet Earth. But just think how much strange stuff is on this planet. So it's not too hard to believe that this whole could be true. There's certain places on Earth like missing 411, for example, people that
Mhm.
just randomly go missing. It's like they step into a portal, their clothes vanish, but their body's gone. And, people say that you can throw stuff into this pit and it's never seen again. Similar to, where people go missing and they're never seen again.
Like portals,
That,
essentially. Portals.
portals, he said that there's never an echo, there's never nothing in this hole. Nothing ever makes a sound, never fills up. So it's just kind of a crazy little uh, topic that I've never heard about, Chris. What do you know about Mel's Hall? You're the one that told me about it.
Yeah, I had heard this. AJ on the Wi-Fi house brought this up one time. Going, and he's a skeptic. He doesn't really believe that it's a real thing. But this it got me intrigued. I had never heard of it either. So, and I remember listening to Art Bell. This was apparently in '97 when this subject
Yep.
occurred. And I don't remember Mel's Hole. I remember another one where there was a frantic caller that called into Art Bell in '97 during
I
the.
remember that one. I know what caller you're talking about. I was just listening to that. He had that, yeah, kind of scratchy. They're gonna hurt me harder. They're
Yeah,
gonna.
I heard that live. And apparently the Mel's Hole thing happened before that.
Hmm.
So it was earlier in the year, like in September or something like that. So or August. But this one here, I'll look at the. Let's see here. I got a thing that I'm going to read. I can't see it. There we go. Sorry about the reflection, guys. I got two lights up here, so I'm going to screen share this. Oh no, that is not what I wanted. Okay, there we go. This is the geologically impossible, the strange story of Mel's supposedly bottom hole. And I can always put a link to this article. It's an extremely obnoxiously long URL that starts with iflscience.com and it goes into a long URL. But this is, I think, a computer rendering or another site that looks like what Mel's Hole is supposed to look like. And on February 21st, 97. Okay, this happened actually much earlier in the year than I thought it did. Okay. A
It
man
was 97 though yet.
It was 97. Yeah, and then there was another thing that happened in September, and then October was the frantic caller. So on February 21st, 1997, a man calling himself Mel Waters rang the late night radio talk show Coast to Coast with Art Bell. A very strange story to tell. According to Waters, on his property about 14 kilometers, 9 miles west of Ellensburg, Washington, there was a hole that seemingly had no bottom. Waters told the host that locals would toss their garbage into the hole, the first thing you're supposed to do when you find an anomaly of scientific interest. Haha. Yeah, that's the first thing you think of, putting garbage in it. And it
And
would never fill
real
up.
quick, I don't know if I didn't get a chance. When I was listening to the videos, they do bits and parts of Mel talking on the show with the different times he was on the show, but
Mhm.
I don't know if he ever gave the exact location. So I wonder where they come up with the theory of where they figured out that it was 9 miles west of Ellensburg. So I don't know if he ever gave the exact
I
location.
think Art Bell said in private he gave him information too on the phone.
He did.
Yeah,
Because I know Art Barrel said that they got in communication with a TV crew and they sent a TV crew up there and
mhm.
after this that you're talking about, but I just wasn't sure where they got the location because it was never said from what I
Yeah, I think this is the military and the government. What they like to do in cases like this is they will convolute a subject. If you find something legitimate, they'll either convolute it. If they can't confiscate a thing, they will convolute it and add mis and disinformation mixed in with a subject. In the case of a portal, they like to build like bases and little shanty towns around something. This is why they basically eminent domained Mill Waters properly, supposedly. But yeah, he went on to claim that investigating the matter, he had gotten an absurd amount of fishing line to dangle into the hole in an attempt to assess its depth. He dangled in, reached down to over 24,000 meters, which is 80,000 feet, without reaching the bottom. And in a case of like a dimensional type thing, yeah, you would probably run into something like that. Let's see. And I won't go into this whole thing. You can go read this. I'll actually get a screen share. The strangest story was when they lowered a goat in there and they came up with this weird seal fetus looking creature. Um, and also, you don't know how much of the story that the military added in when they claimed the property, and how much that was his. Because in stories like that, there's always some yield. We call it the yield. You have a certain amount of truth, and then you have a certain amount of bullshit that's been added to something. So when you're dealing with the yield, just know there's going to be at least a portion of something that's BS. So with this, I know portals, the military industrial complex slash cabal slash corporations and such are very interested in portal sites, extremely interested in portal sites and dimensional openings. They deal with this. A Montauk project dealt with, like with the chair and everything, dealt with like time travel and portals and things of that nature. And they always situate these bases around something that's
What I'm having a mind blank. You made me think of that movie. What was that movie with Kurt Russell, Operation Stargate?
oh
Was
yeah,
it?
Stargate, and then later on, Richard Dean Anderson from MacGyver played the same character, Jack O'Neill, and he became the general later on, and it was about Stargate type of project where they would go to other planets. That there happens to be disclosure in that. One thing I will mention in an episode that happens, the concept happens to be true, where they go to another planet, they find a cure for a disease that's been going on. Then they take the formula that they cured that disease with, bring it back here, and one of the characters says on the way back through the Stargate says, "I wonder what product they're going to make this into on Earth."
Well, it's funny that you say this because it's reported, and there's you started the rundown of the story, and I'll go do a little bit of a rundown story in an article here. We're just kind of give you some tantalizing tidbits of the
Mhm.
story. But supposedly, the outside surrounding the hole, the plants that would grow around it, because Mel Waters was supposedly an herbalist. He was studying Native American herbalism and plants and growing them out there in the Northwest. And around this hole, supposedly on the outside around the hole, the plants would grow and they would have miraculous healing powers. As far as I'm concerned, people would worship the inside of the hole, but if you're lowering goats inside of it, it's like basically microwaving them and giving them tumors and growing weird, strange creatures in them. That doesn't sound like anything that's friendly to me.
No,
And
no,
they said that they got a good feeling from it. And I'm thinking, what?
exactly. You don't know what you're getting. Sometimes Earth alignments and planetary moon, solar, and lunar alignments will open some of these portals and rock ring portals and such. Like in Nevada, there a triangle there, and then there is in the Valley of Fire, there is a rock ring that I found out opens a portal at certain alignments. In Arizona, there's called the Time Portal of Arizona. It's the same way. Now, with that has to do with planetary alignments when they open times of year, things of that nature. Halloween being the strongest. Now, with the plants being on the outside, if people are familiar with the Elder Scrolls game series, if you play Oblivion, that's Elder Scrolls 4, and you go to the whole Shivering Isles portal, what do you see on the outside of that portal? You see plants that actually come from the Shivering Isles dimensionally, and they're right there. The same goes when you had the Oblivion gates open in the game. What's on the outside of the portals? The grasses that were growing in the plains of Oblivion. So this is actually a common occurrence when you see portals of any nature. You see some of the foliage and even some animal life and plant life, everything coming through and bleeding through from another dimensional state. They even showed this in the Witcher 3 video game, Game of the Year edition, Wild Hunt, where the statement was made by a vampire that was in the game, where he would hang near a portal, like he was in a cave hanging like a bat, and he would hang near a portal that was once open, but from the time of the conjunction of the spheres in the Witcher lore, that was open all the time. But when the spheres conjuncted, it sealed him. But he could smell and he could hear sounds coming from the other side of the doorway. Even plants and stuff and moss would grow through from time to time. This is a common theme that comes across a lot of different sci-fi and other types of genres, whereas you're hearing strange plants and animals being near portal openings. And this seems to be a common occurrence. When I say it's across multiple mediums like that, it's a true thing that they're depicting. When that may seem like a little mundane detail, but that actually pops up in multiple genres. So, but all involving portals and gateways. So with that, this with Mel's Hole though, I feel like I said there's some truth there and there's some BS when you're dealing with like so when you're dealing with the military industrial complex and corporations, you're dealing with a lot of myths and disinformation that get pumped out on a regular basis. You see it on the news constantly on pretty much any subject. So that when it comes to these subjects, you have to take with a grain of salt, but you also have to use your intuition. I feel it's a mixture of both misinformation and truth.
Me too. Me too. That's exactly the way that I feel about it. And
Mm.
I'll dive on into a little something here if you'd like. Let me go. Uh, the wrong one, but I'll go right here. We're gonna go 10 unbelievable facts about Mel's Hole, and this is from one of my favorite sites, lithverse.com, by article by Gene Gentry. There's a bottomless hole in the ground about 9 miles west of Ellensburg, Washington. At least that is what a man who went by the name of Mel Waters claimed to exist on his property when he called into a popular paranormal radio show in 1997. People are still talking about the mysterious pit, which has come to be known simply as Mel's Hole. And they are still talking about it. Apparently, it's of a major keen interest of many geologists and scientists. They're trying to prove the existence of Mel's Hole, some of them. And it's become a, kind of what treasure hunting is to treasure hunters, this is to geologists in a way. This is like the treasure of geology hunting in a way. This seemingly endless hole had already been baffling locals for decades. When Waters brought it to the public, it caught the interest of curious minds everywhere and quickly became an urban legend. While some listeners doubted his often outlandish claims, others were captivated and wanted more. Decide what you believe about the legend after reading 10 claims Waters made about Mel's never-ending hole. 10. Waters called into a paranormal radio show. On February 21st, 1997, a man who called himself Mel Waters phoned coast to coast like we were talking about. So he had supposedly got in contact with Art Bell, sent him some facts, and later that night, Art's like, I gotta get you on the show and let's talk about this. So the first settlers dubbed Mel's Hole the Devil's Hole, and the local legend said that it was cursed. But Waters refused to give the exact location, just saying that he lived in Kittitas County, Washington. So apparently he told the county, in a region adjacent to the Manitas Ridge. In two follow-up calls in April 2000 and January 2002, his stories grew even more extreme. There was no way to know at the time that Mel's Hole would continue to capture public attention for years to come. And here we are, however, almost 30 years later, or 27 years later, 25, or 28 years later, here we are talking about it today. Waters tested the depth with fishing line, like we had said. He used 80,000 feet in fishing line and didn't hit the bottom. And people said, well, how can you tell if it hits the bottom? He put a weight on the end of it. So if the weight hit the bottom, there'd be slack in the line, and you wouldn't be able to feel that, the weight of the weight. And I got to researching about Mel. Mel supposedly was an old fisherman, sea fisherman. So that's how he came up with the idea of the fishing line to use it to get to the end of the bottom of the pit. And so they just keep going and buying line and adding line onto the same pole that he had just kept dropping and adding line to. As a reference, the deepest cave in the world is 7,257 feet, and he's at 80,000 feet. So more than 10 times the deepest cave, supposedly. Number 8, the hole brought a dog back to life. But the fishing line was only the beginning. In a claim reminiscent of Stephen King's 1983 horror novel, Pet Sematary, Waters described an instance where his neighbor dropped the body of their deceased dog into the hole. The owner got the shock of their life when they saw their pooch alive and well in the nearby woods only a little while later. Yeah, they recognized the dog because he wore the same collar, but the dog showed no signs of recognizing his owner and did not respond to his calls. While it may be a more desirable result than the grieving pet owner saw in Keen's tale, Waters' claim was more than enough to terrify and enthrall listeners. And I want to hit up on a point we were talking pre-show. People would be throwing their junk in here, and not just live animals. They wanted to see what would happen here. It seems like living beings. I remember, I forget what movie is, they come back, but they never come back the same. Like in regards to like zombies, the living dead, they're not living anymore, even though, they're not the same. And so they come back different. They come back the same, but different. And people throw all sorts of junk in this hole, though. And I imagine a lot of people have seen the movie Land of the Lost, the comedic movie with Will Ferrell, where he builds a time traveling device, and they see all these random objects from Earth in this alien landscape. Well, apparently that's one of the theories here is, you throw stuff down in this hole and it vanishes into another plane of existence. That's why it's bottomless. It just
The weight the rope went. That's why I went 80,000, because if you enter an alignment where there's a more, not necessarily an infinite amount of space, but more space, and you have a portal conjoining that, there could be a misalignment where the lens would misalign. It would probably cut the rope off too. It's alignments of the Earth and different lunar and solar cycles and things of that nature, planetary rotations, everything, the astrology behind it. So yeah, I've heard stories of people looking into other dimensions and seeing art garbage there as well. Certain scientists that worked in the projects, and there's even a comedic episode of The Simpsons where they go into this haunted house. And it is there's this portal there. They throw an orange in there, and it gets thrown back, and there was a note attached to it saying "Stop throwing garbage in our dimension." So
I think I remember that episode.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the Amityville Horror, but for like that. But it was for The Simpsons. So the Simpsons are known for having disclosure in a lot of their material. We could go on forever about that, but that specific bit of information stood out.
You ain't lying about that. I was just reminiscing about The Simpsons, and there's like 30, 40 episodes that kind of that are really good when it comes to, talking about weird and strange events and correlation style
Mm,
stuff. From President Trump waving down the escalator to Ocean Gate.
yeah, yeah.
But uh, number 7, certain items act strangely near Mel's hole. So, in another claim, excuse me, Waters revealed that Mel's hole had strange effects on some everyday objects. Art Bell and his listeners hung on to every word as Waters mentioned the odd things that metal items and portable radios would start to do whenever they were near the opening of the 9-foot diameter, 2.7-meter hole. He claimed that metals would mysteriously change into other metals or substances he held them near the entrance. So, also the metal, you know how metal tings and clangs, whenever it hits?
Mhm.
These are just cans, but,
Where they cling
they're
to.
not empty yet, but the metal cling, they
Mhm.
wouldn't cling. It'd be like a bare blang, just the metal wouldn't cling apparently, so it wouldn't make a noise.
Mm.
And then radios. Waters recounted an instance where he brought his radio to the pit and set it to his favorite radio station, but instead of music, the radio put out strange, unknown voices and programs and music from the past. He had heard a baseball game, like a baseball game from 1960 or something like that. So he was tapping in to all these different radio broadcast channels from the past. Like he's tapping into another dimension, like the whole is just a swirling dimensional, captures everything in history, and you don't know what you're going to get,
That'd be
sort
a
of.
temporal fracture like the Bermuda Triangle or the Devil's
Yep.
Triangle, where, like a paranormal investigator did this test one time. They were getting text garble on their phone, and I presented the theory to a couple of them that said, how do you know you're not getting a text from a version of you from another universe and it's reaching out to elements of the multiverse? So
Yeah, your doppelganger from a dimensional past.
it's sending you.
There's a real mind bender for everybody out
That could be
there.
another paranormal team on the other end of the spectrum. Also in St. Augustine, there was a story like this where a paranormal team went to the fort that's there, the haunted fort that's there, and they went there and because there were stories of paranormal activity, well, about soldiers and everything being seen. Well, they saw this, but they didn't realize they were interacting across time because what those soldiers were actually depicting were the actual paranormal investigators that showed up to investigate the stories of the haunting. So they were looking across time at each other.
Hmm.
So at least that was the theory behind that. Anyway, but with the whole, yeah, I could see how that could happen, where it's a whole land of the lost type of situation, where you are connecting to different times, places, like
That's re-
I said too. Yeah.
I don't know if I could think of any better comparison in a way. Like it just makes me feel whenever, like in Land of the Lost, whenever they go down that river and his machine changes the ionosphere, and they go through that river down into the tubes, and they shoot into like another world. It's
Hmm.
like the pit's another world. It's just a theory, it's just fun to think about, but that's what it kind of feels like, especially when we get into one of these other
And
incidences.
the Galactics call the worlds within worlds theories like that. They call it the introverse, where it's a space within a space. Now, the internet defines introverse as or introversal as like a computer matrix within a matrix, like the TARDIS having a dimension within a dimension for holographic dimension and dimension, or Star Trek having the holodeck. That's what it's defined as. But the Galactics see that as like worlds within worlds, based the same way.
Well, the other thing, that the bottomless pit you could compare to is a hollow earth theory.
Hmm. Yep.
Maybe it is hollow in the center, and he found the entry point,
And
or one of many, one
also
of
in the
many.
Kong movies too. The new Kong movies show like Agartha being like a dimensional space as well. No.
And just think, while we're on the subject of holes and Mel's hole, before I get into the little next tidbit of Mel's hole, it's supposed that many alien creatures and maybe even aliens do live here, not on other planets. That's one of the theories. The aliens live here, not abroad. They're
Yep.
currently here in the earth or underneath the water or something. That's one of the theories. USOs, unidentified submersible objects. So they've been known to come in and out of holes like Mel's Hole, too.
Mhm.
So yeah, I got that strange sort of comparison there. But number six, more unexplained circumstance at Mel's Hole, and this one's strange. Waters described many of his experiments at the pit, and each one seemed to produce a more unsettling result than the last. In one of his final calls, Waters describes lowering a bucket of ice down to 1,500 feet, and when he lifted it out, he noticed that the ice was warm but did not melt. He said it had changed into a flammable substance, ice as a flame. The warm ice was not only time that his experiments defied the laws of science. When he yelled down to the hole, he claimed that there was no echo. There was also no sound after large trash items such as refrigerators or television tubes were thrown into the pit. So no reverberation, no echo effect. Uh, he lowered a sheep down into the hole, and this is what we were picking up on a little bit earlier. One of Waters' most disturbing claims involved lowering a live sheep into the hole to around 1,500 feet. As he did in the ice bucket experiment, the sheep shrieked and kicked on the way down and suddenly went silent. When Waters lifted it out, he found that the animal had been cooked. The sheep had also developed a strange lump, which, to his horror, started to move. He cut it open and found a fetal seal that he said gazed at him with intelligent human-like eyes. Waters went on to add that the creature miraculously cured his cancer. It jumped back into the hole, but was seen later by local sheep herders who claimed it radiated a benevolent presence. So it's almost like the hole viciously and horrendously and strangely mutilates this sheep and creates a seal fetus that emits benevolent energy that can miraculously heal you. This sounds
The
fucking
opposite end of the
insane.
spectrum from the pain, you get the opposite end of the spectrum. So, whereas like you say, you lower that sheep down there, what also could come out is some of the dimensional forces seeing the how can I put it, the dying animal. Say in like satanic rituals where they do the sacrificial of the goat or the sheep or the cat or whatever, there are interdimensional beings like such as like demons, for instance, certain types of demons that will follow that death energy straight to the sacrificial animal. Therefore, it is part of the invocation or conjuring.
Hmm.
So, therefore, with
So it's like the energy that leads up to it.
yeah, it's the energy string that leads up to it. So I'm thinking this is a similar thing. How that
The
could be,
fear, all that, all the emotions that go in with all the energy.
yeah, with all the
All
energy.
feeds off of it.
Like Draco reptilians like to go after animal souls and people's looshing, meaning pain and anguish energy. But how they got a benevolent creature out of that is unknown. But unless it was flipped to the mirror perspective through like some kind of fractal dimensional layer or something,
Parasite.
like a parasite of some kind. But how that could have been benevolent, I don't know. But
Well, that's what I said. It just seems so, I don't know. It doesn't seem, and like I said, this rendering right here, this must be a drawing.
mhm.
But they gave it like the puppy dog eyes, I guess, but the human eyes, it just like, I love you, feel sorry for me, heal, I don't know, it's just creepy.
Yeah, that's very creepy. That creeps me out even looking at it. I feel tight in my chest when you show that. So I don't think it's benevolent, to tell you the truth. I
I
think
don't think so either. If anything, yeah.
yeah.
And well, see, that's the other thing I want to pick up on. There's these miraculous healing. Like I said, it's so vicious, but then it heals. So it's like this transcendent, evil turned good, but I don't know. It's just strange.
Well, it's also it could have taken the energy from the sheep and also given it to Mel, whose cancer was cured as well.
And like I said, it was the other thing, the plants growing around the hole on the outside would heal you as well of certain things. Because Mel supposedly had taken these plants over to Australia. So the deal was that we skipped out on. Let me just finish this, and I'll
I mean,
pick
it
up on
could
things
have gone
later.
to an opposite like universe where something could have been benevolent coming through too, but it's not too much of a stretch with a temporal dimensional fracture. So
And see, the federal government seized the land. The talk of Mills Hole eventually got big enough that the federal government caught wind of it. As Waters recounted in a later call, he was heading toward the hole one day when a man in a suit approached him and said that the area had been closed off due to a plane crash. The man told Waters that he was no longer allowed near the pit. Waters described seeing men in biohazard suits standing behind him. Soon after, the government leased the land and gave him a generous amount of money to vacate the property. Waters accepted the money and moved to Australia. The addition of a government conspiracy significantly increased interest in the urban legend. Waters went back 2 years later. In one of his final calls, Waters claimed that he had come back to Washington 2 years after moving to Australia. So the deal is after the first call, the military had the helicopters there, claimed that it was a wrecked airplane wreckage, so he couldn't get through his gate, get to his hole. They gave him $3 million a month to move out of the deal was he can't talk about it, and he's got to stay out of the country forever. Comes back. Anyhow, he can't go to his hole. They seize his land. However, he gets this email from some natives in Nevada who have their own hole and want from his experience, that's where they did the sheep or the goat and the other experiments. The ice came from that hole, not Mel's hole.
Mhm.
He ended up going to a different hole, which they don't talk in this article. Every other thing that I've researched with this story, it's a different hole that he got to researching with natives. So that's after this. So right here it talks about it. But that was not the end of Waters' story. He said that he found a nearly identical hole in the Badlands of Nevada. That's where he come back. But so Waters claimed that he had come back to Washington 2 years after moving to Australia. Despite a warning from the government not to return, he said police officers removed him from a bus, left him on the streets of San Francisco 2 weeks later. He had IV marks on his arms, several missing teeth, and no memory of what transpired. Waters managed to continue to his hometown, but felt that menacing strangers were stalking him. He was told that his land had been taken over by the government and found the region had been erased on an early mapping system called the Terra server. So that was kind of like the original Google Maps Terra server. And then, like I said, this native uh, tribe got a hold of him, and he went to Nevada, and that's where they did the experiments up there. Number one, Mel Hole is still discussed today, and that leads us to us right now, and
Uh-huh.
everybody that's listening to this. Talk about Mel's bottomless holes have remained surprisingly steady since his calls into the radio show all those years ago. The urban legend has been the subject of many chat groups like Above Top Secret in 05, 2000, and 2007. More people got to talking about the legend on the Sheffield Forum. In 08, a tribal medicine man known as Gerald R. Osborne, or Red Elk, kept the legend alive when he claimed to see UFOs flying over the pit, just like we were talking about. He even suggested it was an underground UFO base, like we said. Facebook poll from the Daily Record asked people whether they believed Mel's Hole was real or not in 2012. Some people from Reddit shared coordinates of possible locations and tried to get a group together to find it in 18. As recently as 2022, it was featured in a podcast called Astounding Legends in May and an article on Grunge in November. Well, guess what? You need to update this article because as late as November of 2024, it's on the Conspiracy Sector show, baby. I don't know, it's strange. And what they don't talk about here, Art was really trying to push Mel for photographs. Get evidence, get photographs, get a crew out there, get university researchers out there, get somebody out there other than the military, which
Yeah.
takes over everything.
Which
But
they do. Yeah.
he claimed that photos, the hole would not show up in photos, one of those mysterious, kind of, just paranormal weird things. And then he also said that, you had to be above it to see it also, it'd be invisible to the naked eye unless you were within 15 feet of the hole.
Mm-hmm.
And other animals, like if you like tried walking your dog up there, your dog would be like trying to shriek and drag you the opposite direction. No animals want to go up to it. So it's just very, 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 very strange. And the fact that he didn't have the privilege of just working with one dimensional hole, but two, goes to show you, And when you listen to his voice, I'm no expert in psychology, but I do study psychology, and I listen to people, whether they're lying, look at their actions, listen to their voice, and listen to their story when they're talking. I'm studying them whenever people are talking all the time, especially subjects like this. And I'm kind of 50-50 with him. He seems to be pretty genuine. If not, he deserves an award for he should have turned this into a storybook because he could have been a millionaire, writing a encyclopedia story about it.
Into the Amityville horror case. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. So I really don't know, but it just faded out that after that final call there, he gave some updates and Mel Waters never gave another update. And I think I forget how long he ran the show. Didn't Art die? And Art died what, about 10 years ago? And I think he ran the show until 02, something like that.
Yes, and yeah, the thing of it is, though, and I don't want to bash Art Bell because we enjoyed his work, but there was a time where he did, after he was gone for an extended period, he came back, and then he was slightly different after that, where he debunked things more often, or he where he took a slightly more harsh critical eye to things. In an overly manner. I'm not saying that this was a bad thing. I'm just saying that the mannerisms and the demeanor changed after he left for a while. Like he was basically told by somebody, "Hey, tone it back a little bit."
I have no doubt that he had a lot of personal struggles too, and you know as well as I do, everything boils down to money. You know how hard it is to make money in the radio industry,
Oh yeah,
basically.
and the podcast.
Sponsorship and everything along that line.
It's too bad he isn't around now because I think he'd have a hit still now. I know George Norrie took over for him,
Yeah.
but
I like it whenever they call George Norrie George Snorri. I
yeah.
like him. I like George personally, but some of the time George is kind of a prick. Some of the time. I like it whenever somebody says, "You can't say that. You can't say that on the radio. You can't say that on the radio." Then it makes it
Yeah,
awkward.
I've run into that too in some shows. Right? No, we don't want you talking about that. I've run
No,
into
you can't say that. Shit.
we can't say shit. Yeah, so yeah. Well, we said it here, folks. So yeah. But
Well, you can't say shit. Shit. I can't say shit is shit.
oh, I've done that. I did. I will say to people, I did this on a podcast one time where I thought I was off the air, and I said, "God, what a fucking tit baby!" And then Chris, you're on the air. I'm like, yeah.
I accidentally fell into Mel's hole. Shit.
Yeah, that would I could see some new T-shirt designs coming out of something like that. But yeah, Mel. The thing with Mel's hole, though, yeah, I do feel this fits more the Bermuda Triangle.
All right. I got an interesting mind bender for you. So let's all pretend, everybody listening, pretend that Mel's hole is true.
Yeah.
And after all the stories that you heard about it, just imagine if you could get put in a shark cage and lured down into the hole. Would you do it?
Out of curiosity, maybe I would, if I knew it wouldn't be microwaved, if they hadn't done the thing with the sheep yet, if they
I
hadn't
know. I know that kind of throws a fear.
throws a monkey wrench into the whole thing. Now, if it was just like in a shark cage being lowered down, I'd have to be curious as to how deep it went and see what the interior of the walls of the hole looked like and all that. Yeah.
So supposedly they wanted Art was against it, but one of the theories that they wanted to do with the echoes is they wanted to get a kitty and throw a live kitty down there to see if they could hear the cat
So,
screaming on its way down. And Art, obviously was against that as I would be
yes,
too. But
so
there's other ways, just get like a fucking radio and turn it on and drop the radio or something
throw a
like a
ghost
portable
box
radio.
on full volume and throw
Yeah, or a CD player, because the radio would lose. Get a CD going on a CD player, battery operated CD player, and drop
like
that
really
down.
put it at full volume and drop it in the hole. Yeah.
Yeah, and see, that'd be strange. Yeah, I wish I could see it. If Mel's Hole was real, I would like to see it. Some of these places I wouldn't want to go to, and I want to go into that real quick just before we go into questioning. I want to sum up a few more of these strange. And we hope you guys like talking about Mel's Hole today, but I want to share a few more strange uh, stuff from around the world, just real quick. So, some of these are more natural than unnatural. Some are man-made, but they are kind of eerie. And one of them is very eerie that I've seen and heard of in the past. Number one, Devil's Hole, Death Valley National Park, Nevada. And like I said, we were talking in pre-show again, all these places that get like the connotation devil, Devil's Gap, Devil's Canyon,
It was
Satan's Alley, whatever. They get this for two reasons. Number one, to scare people away from keeping them out of there. People want that area for themselves. Number two, because it actually is dangerous and you need to stay away. So which one do you believe? Do you risk it and go there and something bad happens, or you risk it and go there and it's fine? Number two is the Darvaza Gas Center in Darvaza, Turkmenistan. Look at this. I would not want to tumble down there.
No.
If there's an entrance to hell, that looks like that might be it. Berkeley Pit, Butte, Montana. So this used to be an open pit copper mine before it was filled with acidic water and became toxic to people. However, the once impressive mine that provided 320 million tons of ore and 7 million tons of waste rock now houses fungal and bacterial species beneath its surface. Uh, so there's some places that you just don't want to go to. The bottomless pit of Flagstaff in Arizona has been around for roughly 100 years and features a drop of approximately 2,000 feet. The area has been off limits to the public since two young boys attempted to climb down the pit in 1991 and were trapped until rescue crews could reach them. The Big Hole, Kimberley, South Africa. Now, this is the largest man-made excavation site in the world. At 3,600 feet deep. Originally, this piece of land was flat, but over 150 years ago, rumors of diamonds below its surface attracted fortune seekers. You believe they've been digging on this spot for 150 years?
Yeah, to be
Crazy.
that deep, yeah. Yeah, I could see that they found, especially in Africa, probably found a lot of gems, a lot of resources down there.
Oh, hell yes. That's Africa is just amazing.
Literally a gold mine. So,
One of my favorite things in Africa, South Africa, is the footprint of God. The big footprint in South Africa.
Big giant like Titan footprint. Yeah.
Here's the one I find intriguing. I've heard a lot of strange stories about this right here. It's the Great Blue Hole in Belize. Sharks, tropical fish, and coral formations make Belize's Great Blue Hole a distinction for scuba and snorkeling. It's over 300 meters wide, so almost 1,000 feet wide, and 410 feet deep. And it's the largest blue hole natural formation. It's also part of the Belize Barrier Reef Reserve System. I've heard, this is just story probably, but I've heard that the elusive Kraken is supposedly.
I can see if it's dimensional or something, coming out, coming out of a hole like that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah. Or like, is it Godzilla?
They say it's the same in Loch Ness with the Loch Ness monster coming from the theory is coming through a different time through a hole.
It's funny that you say that because there's an interesting story at a lake that I grew up on that my ranch was right by that I had no idea about, Nebraska. Why am I having my Lake Alkali? Out by my ranch that I grew up on, there's supposedly one in Nebraska, the alkali lake monster that's like Loch Ness. I was just learning about. I'll have to send it to you. I'll show it to you.
Champlain and all those places, I think, have portals to places too. Yeah. So
I wouldn't be shocked.
Military are around a lot of these different sites. Like you have portal sites in Arizona, you have portal sites in the Great Lakes. This is why they distracted people with the Flint Water, Michigan crisis there, because they wanted to keep people away from Lake Huron because there was some military activity going on underneath the lake. They were building a base, I believe, at the time under that particular lake. So they were distracting because they needed the water for their equipment. So they directed the public's water to the polluted lake, or the polluted river, and we all know what happened in Flint, Michigan. So yeah,
still going on.
Still going on. Yeah. In Lake Huron to solve that mystery.
This would be the Creveno Jezero Red Lake, Imotski, Croatia. The Croatian lake, which is actually dark blue-green in color, is surrounded by red cliffs and is estimated to be 530 meters. It is thought to be the newest crater in the area and is surrounded by another 20 or so sinkholes in the Imotski area. Thanks to a unique rock folding process that formed the Dinaric Alps, cracks opened on the land, creating cavern sinkholes and springs. Dean's Blue Hole, Long Island, Bahamas. On the coast of Long Island, Bahamas, near Clarencetown, is Dean's Blue Hole, a sinkhole likely produced by dissolving limestone. And there's just a lot of unique, amazing natural and man-made areas that are beautiful but dangerous on this earth. Chad Baroni, Banardi, India. Considered to be a hidden gem in India, the Chan Baroni is one of the deepest step wells in the world. Step wells are unique structures found in India that allow people to descend the steps built into the walls of the well to get into the water. Isn't that kind of unique and neat?
Mhm.
And then, of course, mines, copper mines, even, one that could be glorified as a big hole, Grand Canyon,
Oh yeah.
laying down
Yeah,
there.
some say that that was formed through galactic means and not just the Colorado River because it was basically like a quarry essentially. Though they're thinking galactic quarry that over time started to erode to look like a canyon. That's a theory that's floating around out there right now. That it just happened a very long time ago. Like Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, I found out was a meeting place for galactics millions of years ago. But then water got in there after a while and started
And
like a.
just look at that, Kentucky, Arkansas. Look at all the caverns and caves that are underneath those states and what
All
could be hidden
quartz,
in
all
them.
crystals, everything under all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's what lies beneath is what lies hidden is what I've heard
That's where you
before.
get the stories of like all the Agarthan type of settings, the stalactites and stalagmites. We were actually in Luray Caverns recently, me and Joanna were, and it's like an Agarthan setting. You know that scene in the second Matrix movie where you see where they're in the underground caverns and everything of the earth? It's like that where you go under there and it's basically a safer place energetically to be in a place like that. It's humid as hell in there, but it's actually a neat place if people want to go there to see the energy of that place.
Hmm.
Very, very, very interesting. But yeah, Mel's Hole, that one, and a lot of these different places that are mysterious like that. There's a lot of
And
on the planet.
one thing that I want to talk about, it's more of obviously a natural phenomenon that you can kind of correlate into this topic is sinkholes. And that's one thing that I used to follow quite a bit. In fact, it was one of my predictions. We'll have to do that coming up here too. We always do New Year's predictions for the show, and everybody needs to comment the predictions for that episode. That'll probably be next month.
Hmm.
It'll be the Christmas episode and the New Year's predictions. So yeah, everybody start thinking about what you think is going to take place, what your own personal beliefs are, and let us know. Because I believe one of mine, whenever I used to run my conspiracy sector, my OG conspiracy sector page on Facebook before they started I can't even post a tea recipe. I haven't done a post on there for like 3 years just because they don't let me post anything. They literally like I can't do anything on that page. That's why I started this show with you and just branched out to YouTube and just get it. Hopefully people are paying attention on here
Hmm.
because I had quite the following. It was weird. I had over 1,000 people follow my conspiracy sector page in the first 3 months and then nothing after that. It's just like I got
Tripwire out there because it got shadow banned. That's earlier shadow banning is what took.
it's what it was. It's exactly what it was. And then I still randomly, like once a month, I'll be getting a notification from like a post like in 2014 that is not allowed to be on Facebook. And then like I'll get something from like 10 years ago when I first started the fucking page that it isn't allowed to be on there. And I'm surprised, I was talking about sinkholes back then too. Because I feel like we're in a sinkhole epidemic in a way, with the way that we're building all the weight on top of land and some of the more hollower parts of Earth, like swampland, Florida, uh, like jungle areas, humid areas, they're susceptible to it. It's like the Earth is caving in on itself.
Oh yeah,
And
there's some areas that it's being.
slowly but surely.
Yeah, it's being.
And what if Mel's Hole is one of those places where the earth just opens up and everything falls into it. Earth collapses in on itself. And the whole, oh, fuck. Jesus.
What I found out, though, what was interesting, these are remnants of the Lemurian Atlantean War. This is where the time fractures actually originated from the volleying that went back and forth between that 12,000 years ago. See, so this is the standing theory that a lot of these places are a result of the combat between the two sides. And the fallout, basically, the fracturing. And they were using like temporal, like some kind of distortional, like
And we're the pawns now that are stuck in the war.
yeah, it's still going on. This is where you get the transhumanism stuff from too, where the end of Atlantis was they were reaching back even further time during the last Orion War, about 500,000 years ago when the invaders came into the system. What the spiritualists were doing then and the scientists were doing then is they were getting messages from another time and they were creating their own homegrown version of AI then and going into transhumanism. This is why people are so obsessed with both Atlantis and transhumanism because they're getting echoes from another lifetime in another era. So I even had dreams quite a while ago when I was a teenager of seeing these like half human, half machine people walking on the bottom of the ocean. I found out that had to do with Atlantis. So people are picking this up psychically, and then they think it's some new great thing, and it's not because it comes from a period in time where it was very tumultuous and it sent echoes across the centuries. This is where you're getting a lot of these wounds from, is from that time frame. I came to find out, and it's basically the scars of war. And you don't know what you're going to leave behind when you engage in behavior like that. You don't know how, say, in 10,000 years, how Gettysburg is going to be regarded, or some war zone in the Middle East is going to be regarded. So it could be regarded in the same way, like it was some kind of mythological type of thing. Hopefully, by then people keep better records, but that's how time tends to erase a lot of these things. That's why you can't erase your history, or you tend to condemned to repeat it. If you
Yep.
so
Yep.
I feel
If
these
you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
yeah, this is what I feel Mel's Hole, all the Devil's Triangle, all these places are now. Could some of these other places, of course, be being portrayed as cursed and aliens hiding in places? Absolutely. And military hiding in places, absolutely. So I've run across that myself, where you think something is cursed and it's not. And I bring up the same story about a haunted hotel over and over again. And I cannot find this story anywhere, but I use it a lot. Where a guy sees an orange orb over him in the middle of the night in a hotel, paralyzing him. He wakes up, questions the barkeeper outside, down in the lobby, and the guy goes, "Oh no, that's the suicide room where a girl committed suicide." What ended up was this guy didn't work there. He was actually an alien covering his tracks because he got caught. So
Hmm.
it was like because the people said, "Oh, that guy doesn't work here." When he questioned, he asked for the guy. And many people go, "Why did the aliens show themselves?" No, people are capable of catching them in the act. So if you're in some of these haunted places and some of these weird places, you got to consider that maybe somebody's hiding there too,
Yep.
and trying to keep a cover to study people. Like you see in Twilight Zone, where you see the restaurant owner is actually an alien watching people because his people want to survey and colonize the area. Or you see in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, where there's this alien who is practically immortal that you see owns a thrift shop and antique store trading goods. And that happens to be a true galactic thing where some galactics engage in that here on the Earth. So they added a bit of disclosure in that. So you don't know who and where, who are you going to run to and where.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm thinking this is a good time to go into a question and answer here. Let's see.
That'd be perfect.
And this one is one of the two ladies I speak to, Vesa, and this is the famous picture I have right here of those two. The blonde there is her. So, and see the rock formation in the background there. This one here, but that's one of
It's
the
like
places.
Utah.
Yeah, it's Nevada actually. The same. Yeah, and the blonde is Vesa, and that's Atlanta. Yeah. And that's where they come in and out of in Nevada is through that opening. It's the same story what we were just talking about. So where you think galactics are not are from out there, but they're really here.
Huh.
And it's the same story. This is a popular thing that's being talked about now. Are they really from out there or are they here? And I always say 9/10 of what you're dealing with is dimensional and multiverse, and basically you got 90%, about 95% dimensional. You get 5 to 2% galactic, and
Huh.
think of like 2% of a galaxy. That's still a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hell of a lot.
a hell of a lot. So you're dealing with mostly dimensional nexus because the Earth is a dimensional nexus, and it was part of the old
And
Asgard.
why is that? Just it's easier connection or
Yeah,
easier to tap
it was part of
into
the
or
Bifrost. You've heard of the nine realms in Norse mythology. The Earth was part of that. You have Midgard, Asgard, Agartha. You have the worlds within worlds. You have the nine realms that Odin set up. That it's part of the whole Ragnarok tale. So, and the way they described it in the movie Thor was correct, where everything was combined into the large world tree, essentially, and the timelines fall under that premise too.
hmm.
So the multiverse, like they show in Loki, where you see they form the Yggdrasil tree in that series in season two, the season finale, they showed that, and I thought that was fairly accurate the way they depicted it. But where they did a wonderful job with that. Now, if Marvel could clean up its act in the rest of its other departments, that would be great. If they would listen, but that would be great. If Disney would listen to people too, that would be great. But just a little bit of a rant there. So yeah, Vesa wanted to come in. Man, a lot of cottonmouth this morning. Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of throat scratchy this morning, so it's like, and cottonmouth. The cottonmouth usually means an energy drain or an energy fluctuation, sometimes, or plain old allergies too, and virus. But okay, that's it. Ooh. But I knew they were perfect for this because of the nature of the where they come from. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, okay, true. I open this to true benevolence with no conflicting agenda. Really small time request is fairly so. Sorry for the harshness. The energies this time of year are fairly turbulent, and dimensional openings from the time of your Samhain also up into your winter solstice can be a bit rocky. No pun intended. The story though with Mel's Hole, he is correct in his assessment of the battle scars of Atlantis and Lemuria and slash Mu. In this case, he was also talking to some forest people recently from Ottawa, Canada, where they were in one of those trenches with a lot of quartz crystals, like he was talking about the Loch Ness monster coming through in Loch Ness and Lake Champlain, Huron, and all those, and the Great Lakes. This is an old portal network that was actually much older than Atlantis and Lemuria. However, during their war, they caused certain damage to the poles that caused the Earth to slightly wobble a bit in their quest for dominating each other. They were being controlled by an ancient enemy through by which they had opened the doorway on Atlantis too. Lemuria got conquered by what you would call in Scandinavian mythology as dark elves, or a form of tall white or elf-ish type of being, or fairy-ish type of being. You see their depictions as the Moai of Easter Island. The Mel's Hole specifically, he was correct about the part bullshit, part truth. Did the thing with the sheep actually take place? In part. There was something slightly more nefarious going on there. Whereas, did they lower the sheep into the hole? Unfortunately, this did occur. But what came out, it was more akin to, how can I put this? Think of the movie Alien for a moment. There are dimensional fractures. Yes, he was correct that some can open up to good areas, some bad. This was to a dimensional space where you did deal with spider-esque type of things, and also transmorphic types of mammal and arachnid type of creatures. It's hard to explain if you do not have the background or the context, but there are these little cracks and areas that of where invaders are sitting in different dimensional spaces. It's very much like in your Star Trek: The Next Generation, where people were being abducted from the Enterprise because the character of LaForge scans into a deep layer of subspace where there was a bunch of honeycomb dimensions. You're dealing with the same identical concept, where it's a bunch of honeycomb dimensions intersecting on a particular point, which is the hole. Because the bomb went into the bomb that was used at the time was what you would call a toplet bomb, and it would cancel out the surrounding matter. This is what happened to your Mount St. Helens. The reason it erupted was part of your ongoing war with a bunch of these different forces. And this is what happened there. Your Mount Shasta, your dark elves and such occupy that area, and your military create a light show in order to abduct people. Sorry, folks, but with this, a dimensional tear bled through a creature by which then they actually had to throw back into the hole. Did they throw kittens and whatnot in there? No. They did throw a dead horse in there, though, at one point, and they threw the dead dog in there. The reason that the dog did not recognize them is because that body, what happened was, this is actually very similar to Marvel, where you have variants and variations of people, whereas they threw the dead dog in there. And then he spotted the dog walking on the road, and that didn't know him. That was an alternate version from another universe, by which then was exchanged by the dead one coming through for the live one. This that was still not benevolent completely, because of the fact that this was a creepy, not a creepy variation, but a variation. Think in your Guardians of the Galaxy 3, where there was an alternate Gamora character, and they're being brought back by the Infinity Stones when Hulk snapped his fingers and wanted to bring Natasha back, but having those two have died on the same planet, one in a branch timeline, one in the original sacred timeline of 616 in Marvel. What happened to who came back? It was Gamora, but the one that was from the alternate past branch timeline, you see. So therefore, it's a similar concept, whereas it was an alternate that did not know him. So I guess you could say it was a bad situation for the owner in that way. Would there be an oversoul that would have known him? Yeah, of course. But the original that was thrown in then was exchanged for a brand new, or what would seemingly be a brand new version from that other branch timeline. You see how they sometimes will touch each other in certain areas where they're like the branches of a tree that actually move back and forth, like in the swaying of the winds. And there can be storms too that move these swaying winds, very much like wind blows the branches of a tree. There are storms that go through the multiverse, omniverse, and super omniverse as well. This isn't the cause of that other war I mentioned, or the other one before that. This was just a natural occurrence. So I can go into questions if you like.
Yeah, so when it comes to these holes, I don't even know where to begin. They're just so strange that uh, so if a human being fell into it, you just pretend that you're walking along, not paying attention, you drop into it. What do you think that could happen?
Like, say for Mel's hole in specific,
Yeah, yes, Mel's hole specifically.
say if you were to just jump into it and go, wait,
Yeah, yeah, or accidentally fall into a hole,
yes.
a bottomless pit.
It's like that scene also in Marvel where Doctor Strange makes Loki fall for 30 minutes into nothing. It would do that for a little while if you weren't microwaved and mutated. But if you were to fall into a corner of it that would be connected more to the multiverse, it is essentially, think of like how you see in Fallout with nuclear mutations, like in the game Fallout, for instance, and any of its variations, 1, 2, 3, 4, any of them, New Vegas, any of them. Whereas uh, Whereas you have whatever possibility in the multiverse could exist, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. So therefore, that person would mutate into whatever variance that time fracture or multiversal fracture is touching at the time, that's swaying. You see, what that person would happen to be touching is what that person would mutate into, the variations, the switcheroo, basically, like the dead dog for the live one is essentially what would happen if you jumped into Mel's hole. Would you die from this? More than likely. But the ones that would survive it, if it was a different alignment, you would end up in areas of both either Agartha or on another world within the Introverse. So, aside from the fracturing, if you did not encounter any of the little fractal points on the way down, you would end up on one of these worlds. And would you splatter like you jumped off a skyscraper? Only if the alignment was misaligned. You would actually then basically slow down as you got to the other end and then to be deposited on the other end. That's what the original portal did, you see. Our portal, the one we use, goes to a place called Lanulos. So this is a world within world, but also an alternate biosphere as well within that dimension. So that said, and frequency. So therefore, it's the same premise. Or the time portal of Arizona, you end up in a different time-space area. That portal of Mel's Hole is damaged. So with that, it cannot be trusted. You either mutate into some multiversal, weird, multivariant type of thing, or you disappear forever from Midgard and end up in a different world altogether. This is essentially what you would get.
So there's a theory states that the Earth is a living being organism in itself. Do you think these holes could possibly be like part of like a body function of like what we have? Like, are these holes kind of like the nervous system of the Earth, I guess, per se, or how do these holes?
Yes, that also the mushroom network as well.
I guess what's the main functioning of these holes? What's their purpose?
Essentially, they are connecting different points, space, time, and dimension. The Earth is a dimensional temporal interversal nexus, you see. And these are basically mooring lines.
Is this part of the reason why there's a lot of reports sometimes Bigfoot and UFOs are seen together? Like a lot of time, they're correlated together.
Mhm.
You know.
Exactly. You have spaceships that can fuel over these time fractures. That's why you see them at Skinwalker Ranch and Stardust Ranch. They're using them to fuel. Like the Doctor in Doctor Who went over a time fracture where he first was in as Eccleston, Christopher Eccleston in Darwin's time or Charles Darwin's time, or not in that time frame, and not in Charles Darwin, but in any case, he was in that time frame, the old 1800s, where then later on he said he found that same fracture in current modern times and he was able to fuel the TARDIS. Number one, that's happening. Two, Sasquatch actually goes uses some of these portals in forested areas. Some of their people, the ones that can actually whistle tones like our people can, you hear the stories of the tall whites where we whistled and chirped, did things of that nature. The banshee myths, unfortunately, are about some of our people as well. This less reputable soul trading kind. But with this, you have the forest people that are seen going into orbs. Those are spaceships because they're going into something that's bigger on the inside, you see. And this is a little spaceship that is flying around. These can go through these fractures and portals fairly easily, at least the functioning ones. This is also why UFOs crash here all the time, is because of this damaged network that is rebuilding itself. You would have called it the Bifrost in Scandinavian mythology, the path to Asgard. And this went into other galaxies and other solar systems as well before Asgard blew up. And this was the asteroid belt. Now, so with that said, the Earth is forming this new nexus. It's healing, but it's a logistical nightmare for anybody on a spaceship because they're following this big clusterfuck of convoluted path of magnetic and energy fields. This is why they crash. This is also because, again, the Atlantean and Lemurian War started to make to rip old wounds from the previous war, which was that of the Ragnarok or the old Orion War as well, or Lyran Wars, whatever you want to call it. This is essentially what is going on.
Very good. One final question. Uh, what do you believe the military's keen interest and purposes with these holes? What do you think they're going to try to do? Are they creating a technology? Are they protecting it? Or are they using it for something? What do you think their keen interest is whenever they take control over something like this?
Depends on the faction and what what they want. What you said is all of the above. Sometimes it's for control. Sometimes it's to one up another faction. Sometimes it's curiosity to better humanity. Sometimes it's more self-serving interest to control a sector. There are different military factions.
And real quick, Art Bell made a good comment. He said something along the lines of, "It's a bottomless pit. That why not get rid of your nuclear waste?"
That would be a mistake because if you threw nuclear waste in there, it would convolute the fracture further, expanding it. Because, like what I said with nuclear technology, it can also cause the mutations because it cuts into the multiverse. So it's infinite diversity, infinite combinations. That means mutations fall into that category. Well, you throw that in there, you're going to expand it. You remember I will say, in the Lemurian Atlantean War, they used weapons of that same type of mass destruction that people covet now. Where do you think Oppenheimer got the idea from? Not only the Akashic, but the very aliens that wanted him to keep going on with that technology. It's actually illegal out in the galaxy. It's so destructive.
Very good information. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Do you have further questions?
You pretty well summed it up for me, all the stuff I was confused on.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone that is listening to this. Elena is indisposed at the moment, or she would actually be speaking to this as well. Isaac was originally going to, but we felt that this was more up our alley because we live in a situation like this. So, thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you.
And they do live in an environment where if you passed that portal, you would swear you were in another version of Nevada. and it's under a different sun, like a sun that you don't get
Kind of
sunburned.
like a fairyland, kind of like a transition to a fairy
Yeah,
world.
essentially, you're actually correct because the stories of like the fairy children becoming the like the Queen of Scotland, for instance, the green children that turn their Caucasian tone.
Uh-huh.
They came from the same area. You're dealing with like Tirnanog or one of those type of areas, like the
Hmm.
other land of the living. That's what it translates to in English, and it's the area called Lonulos. It's a world on a planet, sort of, but it has an opening on the other end of the galaxy because of this portal network. And essentially, there is a biosphere on the other end of it, so you could say it's both a dimensional space and a planet. So
Hmm.
Asgard was the same way before it blew up. It was a dimensional space, and it still is. There is a space that Odin has claimed too. When he built the Nine Realms, he ended up interlinking all of this fibrous network essentially, where you could literally walk through space and time if you wanted to. And now you're seeing the remnants of that network post any war periods, two war periods essentially. So that's essentially from what I was able to figure out. That's what it is. So that's why it's so fractured and messed up, is because you're seeing the remnants of a very ugly couple of wars. And
Hmm.
you see in like the Mahabharata and all books like that, where you're seeing all these galactics fighting each other and people beating the crap out of each other. This is essentially in cities, flying cities, shooting at each other. This is essentially what I'm talking about. Two big major wars, and that was pretty much it. One linked to the other one across time and space, the same way, like the Bermuda Triangle. So
Hmm.
that's what you're dealing with. The thing is, though, the one thing, and I think I've mentioned this before when Joanna and I were on a cruise that we skimmed the Bermuda Triangle down towards the Bahamas, and I saw an old sailing ship that had the crew and everything to it. I tried to wave to them and everything, and they looked like a cargo vessel you'd expect that was going to the Caribbean. And then all of a sudden there was this weird like overlay that did this in front of the ship and past from. Then we saw a modern day cargo ship kind of take its place. And what happened is one of those fractures, the mirror edges or fractal, like you see in Doctor Strange, the mirror universe with the fractal pieces, moved in front, and then all we saw was a cargo ship of our
Hmm.
time. So we got to see the effects of the Bermuda Triangle, looking at something from ancient times, or at least this, like the colonial period, at least the clipper ship, sailing ship. So
Strange.
yeah, it's very interesting. People go into it, get lost, the same as dropping the Mills hole. They would go into other times, other spaces, other dimensions. So because it's a fracture, think of an incursion like they show in Marvel, where it's all like fractalized,
Hmm.
and places are like glass, like a cracked window or a window in a
Hmm.
door or something. It's they make it more fragile in Marvel than it actually is. Like, oh, you stepped into our universe, you're going to cause an incursion. I don't think it's that fragile. But it would if you had a certain perspective you went into a universe with, or a certain set of physics with, whereas you're perceiving it how and decoding it and encoding it how you would perceive. I could see how you could damage somebody else's space holding that space with an energy you're used to and going in someone else's backyard. I could see how that would damage things, so to an extent. But that's also like they show this in the show Farscape. I've mentioned this before, where the character of Crichton knew a character named Jack. He called him Jack, and Jack was an alien from a dimensional space. And when he phased into our reality, his sets of physics merged. When he came into our physics, he took like a Muppet looking form, Jim Henson Muppet, form, and then he shapeshifted into Crichton's father. And he explained he came from another set of physics, and we were just decoding. It was just our physics were decoding him weird and encoding him weird, and he wasn't translating correctly. And this goes along the lines with people see these white orb-like things with legs and arms sticking out, kind of like those old toys from the 80s, those Mr. Men clay-looking things. People have seen these blobus things, and they've seen these stick figure-like things, and that's because it's a mistranslation dimensionally, from what I
Hmm.
understand. It comes from one of these spaces because of all these fractures, things are passing through the veil wall. And Halloween makes it kind of worse, actually. This is essentially what people are seeing. And dimensional craft can come from a space and into our physics and take a weird form too. And this is what we're seeing. Essentially, that and our own military doing UFO stuff, and the whole congressional narrative they have going with the David Grush files and all this other stuff. That's different. But what people have to pay attention to are some of these other mysteries that are going on, like Mel's Hole. And also keep looking up. You're going to see military, but you're also going to see ET amidst all of our narrative that's going on now. So I don't know if you have anything else to add, Aubrey, before we take this out.
And basically summed it up for me. I guess we'll see in the next. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a weird whole story here in the next few years. After we get done talking about this. I don't foresee it happening anytime soon, but maybe we will.
You had a
Maybe this isn't the last we're going to hear of Mel's Hole, I guess.
Oh no, but you had, actually, to end this, so you had a weird occurrence though when you were looking for the information on Will.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I will share that. So when Chris first shared this story to me, I swear I've never heard of Mel's Hole. Maybe I had read about it, real quickly, but didn't,
Didn't think about it. I didn't think about
yeah.
it. Yeah.
And, but I've never researched it. And, listening to Coast AM the way that I have, I'm surprised that I've never, heard about that call. And after Chris told me about it here about, I don't know, less than 10 days ago, it hasn't even been 2 weeks. I've just been working my hiney off. I haven't hardly been able to even look on my phone at all of the last like 2 weeks. And right after you told me about it, though, I Googled it. I said Mel's Hole, and I swear that right when I said Mel's Hole, it was taking my maps was going to take me to Mel's Hole in Washington. And now when I type that in, there's no like it won't take me anywhere. Like I've tried. It's just strange. The very first time I did is now it's like I can't do it. So I swear it was like a fucking Mandela effect,
Yeah,
sort
like
of weird thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
tips and
because
tricks.
it's just strange. I don't know how to explain it. It's one of those things that just happened on the fly, and I was so busy. Maybe I'm just talking weird, but I swear it gives me minute chills. Just thinking about it. That's why I was
Oh yeah, I can
so
feel.
excited to talk about today's topic a little bit. I was like a little strange. I'm having a little strange experience here. I'm not even at the hole.
Oh yeah, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up when you talk about that. So there is something to a couple of people talking about subjects like this. You begin to change the energy. You've heard the phrase "two or more walk in my name," and people begin to gather and also create peace. Like if they enter a meditative state, like they did in the Washington D.C. Mall, they stopped world crime by like what was it, like 10% or something, like
Yeah.
or 15, 20%, something like that. So imagine if everybody did that. Now with us talking about this, of course, it's stirring up energies. We're uttering it.
Or if everybody had a worldwide joint that we could just pass around to everybody to create world peace.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's essentially what is needed. So I think this is a good place to take it out, Aubrey. If you're good.
I think it's grand.
Okay.
I hope everybody will have a good Thanksgiving season here. Make sure to fill up your belly, and we will see you on the next episode. And be sure to have your New Year's predictions prepped up and ready. We want to hear what you guys think is going to happen. We'll see who's correct or who's close with what's happening. But we hope that you learned something today and had fun about hearing about Mel's Hole. Like I said, I had never heard about it before. I had fun researching this topic, and very strange, very strange.
Yeah, and I heard about it from Y-Files, and I thought it was synchronistic that his Y-Files, the video on Mel's Hole, popped up as you were scrolling on one of the sites. So about the whole to basically in a bottomless pit episode he had. So thank you everybody. Thank you for watching this episode. You are now leaving the conspiracy sector. So thank you everybody. Bye bye now.
Thank you. Bye bye.